In today's episode of the Giraldo Show, we're going to be discussing breaking news about Nick Sandmann, the Covington Catholic High School kid. Teacher unions are now training their members to use identity politics, and a little bit of a relief story with Donald Trump releasing a photo of a dog who was in the ISIS raid. My name is Sebastian Giraldo, and you are listening to the Giraldo Show. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Giraldo Show. I am your host, Sebastian Giraldo. Let's go ahead and get right into the news. But first, I want to thank everyone who has supported my podcast so far. At the time of this recording, we are at 403 downloads over all platforms, not including YouTube and SoundCloud. So I just want to give a quick thanks to every single person who has supported me on my journey to spread the conservative message, especially to people who are younger. And as someone who wants to be a politician, I hope to spread my message enough to hopefully get people to vote for me because of our shared ideals and our shared ideology. But enough about that, let's go ahead and get right into the news. For those who do not remember, Nick Sandmann, this was a while back. This was back in January 18th of this year, so a while back. And for those who do not remember the story, Covington High School Catholic boys were at a pro-life march, and they were wearing their Make America Great Again hats, and they were waiting for a bus. When then all of a sudden, Nathan Phillips, who is a liberal Native American activist, goes up to the kids, doesn't harass them, but gets in their way, beats a drum in their face, and the video of Nick Sandmann smiling at Nathan Phillips's drum beats picked up pace, and the media, especially the Washington Post, CNN, pretty much all of the leftist media and liberal media, really picked up on the story and started to slander Nick Sandmann. And so when the story came out that Nick Sandmann wasn't doing anything, he set out to sue CNN and the Washington Post for the slander that they committed against him. And until now, it looked like the cases were not going to be going through for Nick Sandmann, but a judge is going to reverse the course on the lawsuit of Nick Sandmann against the Washington Post. So in Kentucky, a federal judge reopened Covington Catholic High School student Nick Sandmann's $250 million defamation lawsuit against the Washington Post on Monday, after having previously dismissed it over the summer. The Cincinnati Enquirer reported, after reviewing an amended complaint, Judge William Bertelsmann ordered Monday that the case could enter the discovery phase, and hence a portion of the lawsuit against the newspaper could continue. The lawsuit is allowed to proceed, but has been limited in scope after the judge said that 30 out of the 33 statements that Sandmann's lawyer argued were libelous are not actually libelous. So the lawsuit is going to be allowed to proceed, but apparently out of the 33 statements, only 3 were what is considered libel, which I thought libel was written, but I could be wrong. It could be the other way around. The Enquirer added, the judge's order that discovery can continue means Sandmann's legal team can make requests for internal Washington Post documents concerning the events like emails and communications between editors and reporters. According to the Washington Times, Judge Bertelsmann said, the court will adhere to its previous rulings as they pertain to these statements, except statements 10, 11, and 33, to the extent that these 3 statements state that the plaintiff blocked Nathan Phillips, it would not allow him to retreat. Bertelsmann then added, suffice to say that the court has given this matter careful review and concludes that justice requires that discovery be had regarding these statements in their context. The court will then consider them anew on their summary judgment. So what Bertelsmann is saying here is that the court is going to adhere to the rulings on the 30 out of 33 statements, except for statements 10, 11, and 33, where it was proven that, according to this judge, that they were libelous claims. And he's saying that the court is giving review to all these claims, making sure that the context is correct, to make sure that the Washington Post doesn't lose $250 million. Which, if those claims turn out to be libelous and they do, and Nick Sandmann does win, I don't think he's going to get $250 million. It's probably going to be close to, he might be closer to around maybe like $1 million, but not positive. We're just going to have to see what happens if the court case even goes through further. Sandmann's attorneys, Todd V. McMurtry and L. Lynn Wood, celebrated the judge's decision, calling it a huge win. McMurtry said in an email, the Sandmann family and our legal team are grateful that Judge Bertelsmann has allowed the case to proceed. The court's ruling preserves the heart of the Nick Sandmann's claims. We can consider this a huge victory and look forward to initiating discovery against the Washington Post. McMurdy added on Twitter, "Newsflash. Federal Judge William O. Bertelsmann partially reversed his ruling to dismiss Nick Sandmann's claims against the Washington Post. Nick's case may now proceed into discovery. The ruling bodes well for the NBC and CNN cases as well. So Nick Sandmann filed 3 cases, one to the Washington Post, which has been partially reversed, one against the NBC and one against CNN, both of those which have not been considered at all at this moment." McMurdy concluded by saying, "This is a huge win. Now, Nick Sandmann will be able to start discovery and find out exactly what the reporters were thinking when they attacked Nicholas and the Covington Catholic kids." Linwood then went on Twitter and stated, As a prepare for summary judgment hearing today in LA in Vernon Unsworth versus Elon Musk, the news of our team's huge win in Covington, Kentucky reaffirms my career-long belief that our system of justice works. Nicholas Sandmann deserves his day in court against WAPO, or Washington Post. Now he will get it. Sandmann's legal team also filed massive lawsuits against CNN and NBC Universal, which I stated before, and Fox News reported that on March 12th, the lawsuit, filed just after 3 p.m. in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Kentucky, claims that CNN elevated false, heinous accusations of racist conduct against Sandmann and failed to adhere to well-established journalistic and standards and ethics. The Washington Times reported on May 1st that Sandmann's attorney filed a $275 million lawsuit Wednesday against NBC Universal over its coverage of the Kentucky teen, accusing the network of creating a false narrative driven by its anti-Trump agenda. And again, that is completely true. These news organizations jumped on the story way too quickly, as they do, for example, the Jussie Smollett case. Jumped on it way too quickly. Then it turns out that both those cases were false, against that Jussie Smollett faked his hate crime, and that Nick Sandmann actually didn't do anything to Nathan Phillips. So, again, just the media showing its bias and how they really can nowadays get away with a lot concerning the political spectrum. Okay, so our next story. Teacher unions are now going to teach their members to use identity politics in the classroom. For those who don't know, identity politics is pretty much what Democrats and the left is amazing at using by saying, you're black, you're Hispanic, you're blank, you're gay, you're blank. You shouldn't be supporting the Republican Party because you're blank. That's identity politics. By identifying that you're a victim just because of your race or because of your sexual orientation. That's your identity politics. And the left and the Democrats really are good at this, when the Republicans are like, look, we're all Americans. We all have opportunities and we all have privileges in our own different perspectives, but we all have the same opportunities to get ahead. Republicans and conservatives don't see each other as, we don't want to separate ourselves based on race or sexual orientation, or religion, or etc. We want to be able to unite ourselves as Americans, and we want to be able to help everyone that we can. So a prominent teachers union is training its members to inject identity politics into nearly all aspects of training and included in its journals biased and debunked information. This is according to the Daily Wire. The American Federation of Teachers, or AFT, the nation's second largest teachers union, took to the pages of its quarterly journal, American Educator, to instruct members to incorporate liberal ideology in classroom teachings. So when you had before people saying the liberals are indoctrinating our children, and then the liberals like, no, we're not. Now we're seeing liberal ideology being incorporated into the classroom. The College Fix reported that the main theme of the issue is confronting bias in schools, but the essay that kicks off the issue almost treats the theme as an afterthought. So the essay, written by AFT President Randy Weingarten, wrote that President Donald Trump has fanned biases to aim to dehumanize the other and that erode our democracy, and said teachers can't ignore Trump's bigotry and cruelty, or the fact that his erratic behavior is intended to create chaos and confusion. Weingarten also wrote that Trump is leading a homegrown hate movement. Weird. She didn't really mention any evidence that Trump is fanned biases and aims to dehumanize the other and erodes our democracy, or that he's bigoted and cruel, and that he wants to create chaos and confusion, or that he's leading a homegrown hate movement. So the implication of this is clear. This is according to Ash Show of the Daily Wire. That children need to be taught these things about the President of the United States, even though it's an ideological point, no matter how much the left claims it to be fact. And of course, this is true. What the liberals want to do is they want to teach you about Donald Trump. They don't want you to think for yourself. What teachers in liberally dominated colleges and high schools want you to do is they want you to think that Donald Trump is the worst human alive at the moment. Even though, again, that's an ideological point. It's not a fact. Because the fact is, Donald Trump has done a lot for this country. I didn't even dare to say that he's done more for this country and more for people of color and people of Hispanic origin than Obama did back in his years. And I have no problem defending that. The College Fix also pointed out that the 44-page issue includes 13 references to tolerance, 15 to equality, 32 to racial identity, 33 to racism, 34 to diversity, 39 to discrimination, 52 to prejudice, 54 to hate, 79 to identity, and 102 to bias. Some of the people who wrote articles of the issue promoted misleading and biased information in an effort to suggest that America is racist and in need of further leftist ideology in schools. And again, that's true. 102 mentions of bias in a 44-page issue. What is the mentions of bias in it? I don't understand. I don't know how you can mention bias so many times in a 44-page issue. Obviously, I don't know how big the words are. You're right. It could be not a lot in comparison to the rest of the words, but still, what is so biased that you need to mention it 102 times? What is so identity was mentioned 79 times? What is that supposed to mean? For example, one article in the issue was written by staff from the Southern Poverty Law Center, a notoriously biased organization that paints pro-family, pro-Christian organizations as hate groups in the same league as the KKK. The authors, who are Maureen Costello and Cassandra Dillard, cite the SPLC's woeful inadequate report from 3 years ago that claimed hate crimes increased after Trump was elected. The reports relied on unproven and unchecked allegations of incidents involving racial slurs and symbols, bigotry, and the harassment of minority children in the nation's schools. The SPLC did not confirm the anonymous reports it received, some of which turned out to be false. So again, we have an article being written on completely false and proven false statements on a report that apparently hate crimes increased when Donald Trump was elected. I don't know how you can prove that. I mean, I guess if you say in your manifesto that you're a Trump supporter and you want to kill other people because you're a Trump supporter, I mean, I guess you could say that. But considering that the majority of the mass shootings in the country's manifesto, a lot of them have actually had a negative light of Donald Trump. I'm not going to mention anything else about the manifestos. That's all I'm going to say. However, it is interesting that a lot of the manifestos, if you read them, they don't really seem too pro-Trump. Some of them are. Some of them are pro-Trump. Some of them are pro-Democrats. The manifestos are written by horrible, horrible people. Let's just all agree on that. That people who go to these places and shoot up innocent people are horrible, horrible people who should be put to the death penalty if they're not already dead. Further, the SPLC's report ignored 2,000 similarly anonymous reports of anti-white hate incidents in schools. The authors of the article tried to downplay these allegations by writing, teachers also reported a handful of incidents involving name-calling directed at white people. So, interesting. We have 2,000 anonymous reports of anti-white hate, but the people of the article, they're like, no, that's not true. There are also people that were white that were saying anti-not white things. Again, if you have to recognize racism on both sides. It's the question, what's a bigger issue, white supremacy or racism in general? Obviously, the question is racism. You'll probably find a lot of people who are not white that do not like white people for some reason or another. And that's racist because they're making judgments and they're hating someone primarily based on their skin. White supremacists, while they are out there, it's not as big as a problem as racism in general. Because a black person being racist to a white person is just as bad as a white person being racist to a black person. Racism is bad all around, no matter who it's targeted at or who it's by. It's bad all around, and we need to condemn racists, white supremacists, KKK members, and Nazis all around. Those are horrible, horrible people that we shouldn't condone that activity. We should condemn it. It should also be noted that the SPLC is currently conducting an internal investigation after allegations from current and former employees surfaced, claiming the organization is a hotbed of racism and sexism. The allegations led to the firing of the group's co-founder and the resignation of its president. So we have, again, someone's words that are actually false, causing the job or the livelihood of someone else. We saw this with Brett Kavanaugh. We saw this with Nick Sandmann with the story that we mentioned earlier. It's people they're not waiting, first of all, on the stories to come out, and second, they're using their inherent biases, because everyone has biases, but still, the ideological biases, I guess it would be a better term to say, to attack people who don't agree with them ideologically. even though they're very nice people. I'm gonna guess Nick Sandmann's a very nice person. I haven't met him. I'd love to maybe do an interview with him if the podcast gets big enough and he ever ends up listening. But again, it's not fair. You can't claiming something that's to be true that's actually false. It really puts the person who you're claiming against in a horrible light. Brett Kavanaugh is a perfect example. Christine Blasey Ford accused him of raping her. Turned out her story was, you could barely collaborate with it because it's so mixed up. You feel so sorry for Brett Kavanaugh because he was just accused of being a rapist. He's never going to be able to play that down. Similarly with all people who are accused of rape falsely, you're never going to be able to play that down because a person who is going to employ you is going to look up your name and they're going to see, oh, look, this person was accused of rape. They're not going to see you're acquitted of rape. They're going to see, the first story they're going to see based on your name is that you were accused of rape or you were accused of some certain crime. Another journal, sorry I'm going a little bit of tangents, but it's just important to get my own opinions out there. Another article in the journal from Adam Sanchez implores teachers to teach students an anti-American version of the country's history, which emphasizes racism and inequality all over overall else. Okay, anti-American version of the country's history. Why would you want to do that? The reason you can say anti-American things is because you're in America and it was founded by good people who wanted this country to be a free country. You can't say that you probably couldn't say that in different countries. Sure, go to Venezuela and call Venezuela and spread anti-Venezuela propaganda and see how that works out for you. That version of American history is from Marxist historian Howard Zinn, whose work was criticized by its Stanford University history expert as a crusade built on secondary sources of questionable provenance, a mission of exculpatory evidence, leading questions, and shaky connections between evidence and conclusions. The main theme of the journal is actually teaching students what to think, not how to think. Again, that's very true. You see a lot of bias. There was a study done that, for example, communications or anthropology had, in a ratio, on average, 107 liberal teachers to 0 conservative teachers. So 107 liberal teachers teaching a certain subject. Of course, you're going to teach people what to think and not how to think. The point of school should be teaching students how to think and forming their own opinion, and shouldn't be implanting implanting biases that you have into students. You're not teaching them how to think. You're just creating a bunch of NPCs that say orange man bad. You're not teaching them how to think. And it's weird because conservatives, I see a lot of young conservatives, they have broken off of that tangent. They actually know that, hey, my teacher isn't responsible for what I think. They can teach me how to think, and that's what I'm going to do. That's how I'm going to formulate my own opinions. So I think it's very important to note, again, schools and teachers shouldn't be pushing inherent biases from either side. I don't think it's good if a school pushes just only conservative viewpoints. It's important to either be neutral as possible, or be consistent in showing different viewpoints. But considering that the majority of universities, I would even dare to say all of universities, except for a couple like Liberty and BYU, are majority liberal. So that's just a bit of my 2 cents about the whole situation. And we're going to end off the day with a bit of a happier story. A dog that got ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Trump released a photo. So Trump tweeted, "We have declassified a picture of the wonderful dog that did such a great job in capturing and killing the leader of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi." His name was not declassified, but we have a very cute picture of a dog that helped in the capturing and killing of an ISIS leader and founder. So again, a very cute dog. It's very important to see. I'm going to link to the article in the description so you can look at the photo. But that's going to be it for today's episode. Thank you very much for tuning in and supporting the podcast. I really appreciate everyone who is a big fan. And make sure to give it a like, a follow, a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or anywhere that you listen to the podcast. Thank you very much, and I'll see you tomorrow. My name is Sebastian Giraldo, and you are listening to The Giraldo Show.